Hi, I'm Doug Gaylor, and I am President and Chief Operating Officer of Crexendo. Thanks for joining us today for the Little Grapevine presentation on Crexendo. Crexendo is one of the leading providers in the unified communications as a service industry, and that is telephone service, business communication, and collaboration services for small and medium and small enterprise-sized businesses. We're headquartered in Tempe, Arizona, and got 57 employees, and finished 2019 with 14.4 million in revenue and 1.1 million in profitability. We're really excited to tell you about the Crexendo story, and I think you'll find the presentation most informative on us. And then we've got a nice question and answer section at the end. Before we get started, I'd like to just tell you that we're all in this together, and with the pandemic issues out there, Crexendo's kept the Keep America Connected pledge going. We've committed that to the FCC and have told all of our customers and our partners that we're here for them. And we're doing a lot of things to make sure that they're making it through this pandemic with incentives to waive payments, waive activation fees, give them free collaboration tools and collaboration mobility applications to help them work remotely. So first and foremost, we hope that everybody out there is safe and healthy, and together we'll get through this pandemic. With that, we will turn it over to the presentation and dive right in. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the Crexendo presentation for the Little Grapevine community. So thanks for joining us, and we will jump right into our presentation here. So obviously, we'll start with our safe harbor statement that you've seen throughout all the presentations. So Crexendo, you guys, if you've been following us, know a little bit about us. If you haven't been following us, we like to consider ourselves the best kept secret in UCaaS. And what does that mean? So Unified Communications as a Service. So if we think about what Unified Communications as a Service is, it's business telephone communications, it's collaboration, it's voicemail, it's email integration, all of those forms of communication combined in one platform that's a hosted platform, and it's treated as a service as opposed to the old traditional way of doing telephone communication, which is buying a traditional premise-based hardware equipment. So everything is moving to the cloud nowadays, and UCaaS is leading the charge there. So who's Crexendo? We're one of the fast-growing tech leaders in the sector right now. We've got a tremendous amount of industry experience behind us, and we've actually built and maintain our own platform, and we'll dive into a little bit more on that as we get through the presentation. And you're going to hear some great things about Crexendo today from myself. Apologize, I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, but I'm Doug Gaylor. I'm the President and COO here at Crexendo. And so we're going to tell you a lot of great things, but it's not just us that are going to tell you great things. As you can see from the slide here, you'll see a number of awards that we've continued to win in the industry for having a great platform and a great solution out there. So today, especially when we talk about what's going on in the industry, today communications is any device, anywhere, anytime. And so when we think about what the traditional telephone system has changed from for businesses, it used to have your telephone system in the equipment room, and you'd have a phone on your desk. And if you were at your desk, great, you got your calls. If you weren't, you got voicemail, and then you called in and checked your voicemail. That was the old way of doing things. And now with the cloud, obviously things have changed to where communication has changed its form to where it's communicating anywhere, anytime with anybody. And so we're not just talking about the phone on your desk anymore. We're talking about the computer. We're talking about your cell phone and mobility tying into that. We're talking about messaging with text messaging and instant messaging and chat capabilities. We're talking about collaboration, and collaboration is going to be screen sharing and being able to share my screen and be able to do video conferencing across my collaboration sessions. And it's also contact centers. That's call centers and contact centers to be able to answer calls and retrieve calls and customer service and sales environments, and be able to integrate with applications like Salesforce or Zoho or any other type of CRMs out there. So when we talk about what's happening out there in the industry, a lot of changes in the industry, and that's what we're seeing with UCaaS taking form. And when we think about what's going on in the industry, a tremendous amount of growth opportunity. So if we think about the UCaaS market today, just tremendous amount of growth. And that growth is going to accelerate now with all of the COVID-19 instances that are really changing the way businesses operate. So when I did this presentation a few months back for the Little Grapevine community, we were talking about the fact that 70% of the businesses out there in the United States still haven't migrated to the cloud for their communication solutions. And Gartner and Frost and Sullivan and all the industry reports show that the industry was growing at a fairly rapid rate. It was going to double from 2017 to 2021, and even at that rate, at the end of 2021, there were still going to be 50% of the businesses out there that hadn't migrated to the cloud. That was pre-COVID-19. Now, if we fast forward 3 months, 4 months later, you're seeing a tremendous amount of pressure on businesses today to adapt to forms of communication that allow them to communicate remotely, that allow them to collaborate their messages using screen sharing and video conferencing. So although these statistics were really zooming up the charts previous to COVID-19, I think COVID-19 is really going to set the stage for even more rapid migration to the cloud. And so I think if you look at what is going on in the UCaaS market, it was already a very, very fast trending marketplace, and the pandemic that we're currently in the midst of is only going to accelerate that growth towards UCaaS. And so that's kind of indicative of what we see in the market. So if you look at what's going on in the market today, I've used this slide before, and it's still very appropriate, and probably even more appropriate now. So if you think about what's happening out there with this being a land grab, as I mentioned, 70% of the businesses pre-COVID-19 hadn't migrated to the cloud for their communications. And so now as businesses are coming back online and people are returning to work, and we're struggling on how the post-pandemic era is going to look like, businesses that were not able to effectively communicate and have remote capabilities and have video conferencing and collaboration, they really suffered through this last 6-8 weeks with the pandemic. And so what we're seeing is that it's not only a land grab prior to COVID-19, but I think it's going to only accelerate. And that just means that there's going to be a lot more customers transitioning a lot quicker than previously expected. And Crexendo is positioned extremely well to take advantage of that. We're coming off of a fantastic 2019 where we were profitable, had nice growth. And when I talk about profitability, most of the competitors that you see on the screen here weren't profitable in 2019. So Crexendo and Cisco and Verizon are really the only three on the screen here that you saw that actually were able to post profitability in 2019. So we're proud of the fact that we've had great growth, but on top of great growth, we were able to grow that profitably. So what makes Crexendo unique in the space? First of all, we've designed and developed our own platform. So by the fact that we've made our own in-house solutions, we've got higher margins, we've got higher capabilities to be able to get to that profitability. And so by having our own in-house solutions, we're in control of our own intellectual property. We're not tied to anybody else's platform. And so we've built our own solutions with our own hardware and our own software. So we're in control of our own destiny. We're a CLEC, which is a competitive local exchange carrier. That means that we provide the dial tone, and we're publicly vetted by the public utility commissions in all the states in the United States. And so we're a CLEC across the United States. Probably the most advantageous aspect of our solution for our customers is the fact that maintenance and upgrades are included for the full term. So when a customer signs up with Crexendo, their phones are covered for a lifetime warranty. Their service and support is covered for a lifetime warranty. So they don't have to worry about any incidental expenses. So it gives them the security and the satisfaction of knowing when they move with Crexendo that all their needs are covered and there's no hidden expenses down the line. Another unique advantage with Crexendo is that most of our high-end features come standard. So where many of our competitors charge an extra fee for some of the features and capabilities, we include a lot of those high-end features as a standard offering in our platform. We're 24/7, 365. So businesses today now more than ever are running around the clock, and so is our customer service and support. So when customers need us, we're there for them. And if customers need custom applications, we're available to do that too. Our in-house engineering team is fantastic at building new solutions or enhancing existing solutions to meet customer needs and expectations. And it's easy to switch carriers and keep your existing hardware. So if you think about, the competitors that we had on the slide previously with 8x8 and RingCentral and Vonage and others, their phones, they sell third-party phones that are usually Cisco phones or Polycom phones or Yetlink phones. And guess what? We take care of all of those phones on our platform as well. So if you're on an existing hosted provider, you can easily migrate your phones over to Crexendo with no challenges. So why now? Why is it the right time to invest in Crexendo? And as I said, we hit an inflection year last year in 2019. So we had a nice increase. We had 25% increase in our telecom service revenue year over year for 2019. Nearly 100% of our customers are on long-term contracts with us, and that's pretty critical. And that's critical because we have a extremely large backlog amount, which is unrecognized revenue, and we'll discuss that in a future slide. But the fact that all of our customers are locked into long-term contracts mean that we've got a really strong revenue stream, and it's a recurring revenue stream that we can count on with those customer contracts in place. We had net income of 8 cents per share, 1.1 million in total net income for 2019, and that allowed us to produce positive cash flow of 1.6 million for the year. So real pleased with the progress that we're making, and real pleased with the results that we were able to post for 2019. So that financial profile, what does it look like over the years? So if you've been following Crexendo for a while, or even if you haven't, this will give you a snapshot of where we've come from and where we are today. If we look back to 2017, fairly considerable losses, and we trimmed those losses considerably in 2018, and then 2019 reversed those losses into positive GAAP earnings. And so if we look at what that's resulted in from a market cap perspective, it's pretty significant. Market cap at the end of 2017 was 30 million. At the end of 2018, a slight increase to 36 million. And then in 2018 to 2019, we increased that market cap from 36 million to 63 million. And if we look at the end of Q1 of 2020, we were at 64 million at the end of Q1 2020. And as of April 30th of 2020, a month later after Q1, we've seen a nice increase in our stock price up to $6.18 at the end of April, which put us at a $92 million market cap. So tripled our market cap since the end of 2017. So pretty pleased of how we were able to do that. And we've done that by not diluting our shares and increasing our revenue nicely year over year and increasing our backlog, and at the same time maintaining profitability and getting to profitability over the last year and a half. So again, as we highlight where we are today, we just announced our Q1 results here within the last 2 weeks, and so we had strong Q1 earnings as well. So if we look at our trend here, 2017 to 2018 to 2019, and then we compare Q1 of 2020 with Q1 of 2019, you'll see that increase there. And the light blue here is our recurring service revenue, and the darker blue is the one-time product revenue. So as you look at the results here, about 85% of our revenue comes from our service, and about 15% comes from our product. So in Q1, you'll see that we posted 3.71, and that's just on the telecom. That's not total revenue. That's just our telecom segment. And then as we mentioned, since all of those customers are on long-term contracts, our backlog continues to grow. And what that backlog number is that's all of the contracted revenue that is unrecognized at this point in time. So at the end of Q1 of 2020, we had 26.6 million in backlog. And the way that breaks down is the following chart. So you can see that about $8 million that we'll recognize in 2020 from that backlog. and then you'll see that number decrease to about 7.5 million for 2021, and so on. And the nice part there is that, if you look at where we are today, we finished last year in 2019 with about 14.4 million in revenue. So if you look at 2020, we've got $8 million in backlog. So we're already starting out the year with more than half of that revenue already locked and loaded for us. Again, as we highlighted, our biggest accomplishment over the last few years is taking these negative trends of GAAP and non-GAAP losses and turning them around. So from 2017 to 2018, and then 2019 having GAAP net income of a very decent amount. And then as you look at Q1 and Q2, or comparatively for Q1 of 2019 and Q1 of 2020, you can see, again, very positive trends there. So real pleased with the fact that we've hit those inflection points. From a growth perspective, we anticipate being able to keep those same growth trends up. And again, most importantly, keep those growth trends up while maintaining profitability. So how do we get to where we are today, and how do we continue that growth strategy? So we grow through a number of different areas. We've got our sales strategy, which is really a bifurcated sales process. We've got partner sales and direct sales that make up our two sales channels. About 70% of our revenue today comes from our partner sales. About 30% comes from our direct sales. Our direct sales is really concentrated more on larger national accounts, and our partner sales are coast to coast. So we've got partners, in just about every state in the country, and we've got over 240 partners today. And we continue to add new partners each and every month and each and every quarter. So it's important for us to continue to add to our partners out there while also maintaining our existing partner relationships and growing those relationships. And if you look at what our partners are doing out there, our partners are really focused in really four key areas. We have partners that are traditional telecom VARs. Those are businesses that sell traditional telephone services. So maybe they're putting Crexendo into their portfolio to replace their older Mitel or Avaya offerings. And so Crexendo becomes now their cloud positioning product of choice. We've got data VARs and B2B VARs. And so data VARs and B2B VARs would be business-to-business resellers that aren't necessarily in telecom. So those might be copier companies. Those might be mobile companies. In fact, US Cellular, which is the fourth largest provider of mobile communications and cellular communications in the United States, is our largest partner today. And so we are the exclusive UCaaS provider for US Cellular. They're headquartered out of Chicago and do a tremendous amount of mobile and cellular work throughout the United States. But that relationship has grown to be one of our strongest relationships. And so when I talk about B2B VARs, business-to-business VARs, those are businesses that don't necessarily have a hosted telecom offering in their portfolio and have gone out and sought companies like Crexendo to be the company that fills that void for them. So our partnership with the B2B VARs is probably the strongest key area that we focus on today, even though traditional telecom VARs would naturally be a strong area for us. The B2B VARs is actually our fastest growing area of resellers and partners that we have out there. Then thirdly, on top of that is managed service providers. So managed service providers are just that, consultants that go out there and provide a managed service approach to businesses. They go out there and find out what businesses are doing from an IT and communication perspective and offer solutions. And so that's another key area that Crexendo has a lot of partners that are MSPs out there. And then finally, master agents. Not a large concentration for us with master agents, but we do some business with master agents out there that have relationships with multiple carriers and multiple providers and go out there and represent Crexendo to their potential clients. So between our growth strategy with partner sales and direct sales, again, it's about 70% with our partner sales, about 30% with our direct sales. And then on top of that, we look at our future growth strategy to include potential acquisitions. We're always looking for accretive acquisition targets, and there's lots of opportunities out there. And so we would anticipate that over the course of the next 12 months that a nice accretive acquisition or two should be in the cards for us. So that's kind of Crexendo in a snapshot. So not only are we very focused on what we're doing out there, but we've got an extremely experienced leadership team that has a tremendous amount of experience in the telecom sector. As I mentioned, I'm the president and COO and proud to be leading the team here. I've been working with our CEO, Steve Mahalo, for 33 years now. And so Steve was the founder of Intertel, which is a company that he founded in 1969 and grew to $500 million in revenue before selling off in 2008 to Mitel for $750 million. And when Steve sold the company, or when the company merged with Mitel, I would have thought Steve would have rode off into the sunset, but instead he saw everything migrating to the cloud and really had a vision that the next chapter in his business life was going to have the best cloud communications provider out there in the industry. And so I joined forces with Steve 10 years ago, and we've been building Crexendo ever since to the success that we've got. We put our first telecom customers on our platform in 2012, so we've got 8 years under our belt to get to where we are today. And if you look at the rest of our team here, again, a lot of industry experience, not only from a telecom perspective, but also from a financial perspective. Ron Vincent, our CFO, that many of you may have seen us on some of the investment roadshows doing our tag team, comes from a great history with doing audits for other telecom companies with Ernst & Young, and so great success there as well. So to wrap it up, especially now post-pandemic, or while we're in this pandemic and looking at our post-pandemic capabilities out there, it's never been a more perfect time to ride the cloud with Crexendo. If we look at what's going on out there in the industry with communications, all businesses out there are trying to figure out, how their business is going to look once this chapter in our lives is over. And so as we look at how this is going to change the environment, it's only going to change it for the better for companies like Crexendo. So companies are going to need to work remotely. They're going to need to have collaboration tools and video conference tools. They're going to need to be able to make changes on the fly. And so when we look at where Crexendo sits in the industry today, businesses are going to be rapidly migrating to the cloud. And so with our reliable technology that we own, with the fact that we've got custom software applications and capabilities to design solutions around customers' needs, the fact that we've got a tremendous amount of experience, not just with our team, but with our partners and with our partners' sales teams out there, we've got a tremendous amount of growth for the future. And so we're looking forward to highlighting some of this with the Little Grapevine community. And so with that, we can wrap it up and open it up for some questions and answers from the Little Grapevine community.
We want to thank you, Doug, for that great presentation and overview of the company. We're now entering the Q&A session of the presentation. And of course, if you have any questions, you can definitely email them to us at conferences@littlegrapevine.com. We're always in constant communication with the presenters on Little Grapevine, and we'll make sure to forward your questions to them to get them answered. So at this point, I'm going to ask Doug some questions, and we'll maybe take about 10, 15 minutes doing that. Hopefully keep digging into the company, understanding the company a little more. So, ready, Doug?
Absolutely. Thanks, Maj.
Great. So I think we had a lot of questions in the previous Little Grapevine conference, which will be available on your profile at our site, littlegrapevine.com. I'm not going to belabor those questions too much. I'm going to continue digging into the company. But I think it's important that we understand, if possible, what differentiates competitors from the UCaaS space, such as yourself and other competitors out there. Maybe you can give a little bit of your opinion on that.
Yeah, great question. It's an extremely competitive environment, as you're well aware. And so there's a lot of competitive forces out there. But yeah, the things that really set us apart from our competition is, one, that we make our own platform. Many of our competitors use somebody else's platform. For example, BroadSoft. BroadSoft is the platform of choice for quite a few of our competitors, including Vonage and Verizon and Comcast and Charter. And so a lot of our competitors use BroadSoft as a platform, and then they use somebody else's telephones. They use Polycom or Yealink or Cisco phones. We're pretty unique in the fact that we make our own platform, and we've designed and developed our own telephones for our platform. So that's a unique proposition for us. The fact that we have made our own platform and make our own phones also allows us to put a lifetime warranty on our phones, which is also another unique differentiator. And so when we think about us in front of a customer with our competitors, we're talking about the fact that we've designed, developed, and support our platform. We've got a lifetime warranty on it. And then most importantly is a lot of the features that we include in our system as a standard offering. Many of our competitors charge extra for. So I think that we present ourselves extremely well because price-wise, we're going to have a price advantage over our competition. Feature functionality-wise, we're going to be lockstep with them, and capability-wise, I think we're going to have a better solution all the way around for less money. And so again, in a competitive environment, our claim to fame is going to be the fact that we stand behind our product, we manufacture it, we support it 24/7, and customers get free lifetime warranty and free lifetime support on the platform.
Great. It's funny. There was a time probably when having a hardware solution in this industry was not a good thing, but now it's a situation where you're one of the only companies left that has that that one-stop shop of the hardware and the software. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think it's important that not only do we design the software and the applications, but the hardware is a critical component for that. And so where many of our competitors use that as a loss leader, we actually feel it's an important part of our solution. And so we have strong margins on our hardware along with our services.
Great. Now, because there'll be some institutions listening to this presentation, I think we should, before we keep digging into the business, really talk about your uplisting. I think you said you had some plans to uplist in 2020. I think you've been mentioned on your Q3 and Q4 call. I think you addressed on your Q1 call this year of 20. So, can you give us an update on where we are with the uplisting process?
Sure. No, we're real pleased with our results in 2019. It allowed us to meet all of the minimum requirements to organically uplist. So we've started that application process. We have submitted our application to NASDAQ, and that's in the review process right now. We're hoping to hear something back from NASDAQ soon, and we'd love to be uplisted by the end of Q2. Obviously, it's got to go through the proper review process, but we're in the middle of that review process, and we're hopeful that we will hear some positive news there relatively soon.
Great. Let's just move on. Let's talk a little bit about COVID-19. I'm sure a lot of our listeners want to hear about that and kind of get your perspective on that. You definitely talked about being some advantages for your company long-term on that. But I think it's still important to understand how it maybe is affecting your current customer base. Maybe can you talk about the exposure you have to that potential risk of your customers being negatively impacted by that? How diversified are your customer base to kind of shelter that? And are you starting to see any new customer inquiries because of COVID-19, or is it too early to see that?
Sure. Yeah, COVID-19 has definitely changed the way of the world as we know it. So, when we did the presentation for Little Grapevine back in February, it was just a small topic of discussion, and here we are, fast forward 2.5 months later, and it's changed the way the world is operating and changed everybody's lives out there. So yeah, COVID-19, has it affected our customers? Yes, it's affected every business out there. To what extent, we haven't really been able to calculate that yet because businesses are just starting to come back into the fold. We are still seeing businesses with new customers coming on board. We're constantly working with businesses that were either in the stages of evaluation prior to COVID-19 or due to COVID-19 have been forced to evaluate that. So we're constantly bringing in new customers as we speak. We're pretty lucky that we've got a very diversified customer base. We don't have a high concentration in any given vertical, and we have very little exposure to some of the business areas that are really most highly impacted, areas like hotels and airlines and travel industry and restaurants. Although we have some restaurants out there, very few hotels, very few travel-related type customers out there in our customer base. So we've got a very diversified customer base. We do work with a lot of small businesses, however, and they're some of the most drastically affected businesses by COVID. And so, we're working with those businesses. We took the Keep America Connected pledge that the SEC and FCC came out with and asked utilities to take the initiative on. So we're working with all of our customers out there. Again, most of our customers need our services more now than ever. So when we think about what happened in the first month or two of the pandemic, we actually saw a tremendous spike in our customer service department, because every one of our customers that had business solutions working for their business now needed to change that whole operation to a remote functioning office. And so our system was already set up and ready to do that. We just had to walk them through that. So for our existing customers, we were right there for them. For customers that weren't prepared for this disaster, and we always talk about our solution being disaster recovery specific, and we've never really talked about it in terms of a pandemic, but now that we're in the middle of a pandemic, the disaster recovery solution aspect of our business is mission critical. So we're constantly talking to businesses, and I anticipate that need for our services is only going to grow as businesses come back and reevaluate what was right and what was wrong for their business during this unprecedented time. So businesses that weren't prepared for this disaster, that had old legacy systems, when they come back to work, the first thing they're going to be doing is evaluating how can they set up their communications within their office to prevent something from like this happening again.
Great. So, I'm assuming that, remember you talked about 70% of small businesses and medium businesses have not adopted the cloud yet, or a communication type of solution yet. So I'm assuming COVID-19 is going to maybe accelerate that, which can definitely improve the growth prospects of an already favorable kind of industry here, trends. But I was wondering though, now with more, with this all happening at one time, there's the competition actually getting more intense. Are you seeing that? And what does that mean for customer acquisition costs, being able to maintain margins as you may have to compete harder against companies that are trying to get market share? Maybe they're lowering their prices, maybe they're giving away things for free. How do you see that landscape kind of shaping up right now?
Sure, it's a competitive environment, as I mentioned earlier, and so when businesses come back and start reopening and start evaluating their communication needs, they're going to need to look at what options are out there. So from a marketing perspective, we hired a director of marketing in Q1, and that's really been effective for us. We've been rebranding our offering out there and getting our message out there in a different format, and really improving our branding perspective and our marketing perspective. But we're not going to be able to compete against somebody like a RingCentral that spends a tremendous amount on digital marketing. And so, we're going to be very selective about our marketing approach and where we put those dollars to try and get that customer spend. What we really concentrate on a lot, Maj, is that, as I mentioned, 70% of our business comes from our partner community. And so our partners have existing relationships out there with their customers. And so we're working with our partners to get the right messaging out there to their customers. So as their customers return to work, they know that they can reach out to their partners and they have solutions in place for them. So our marketing approach is a little different than, maybe a RingCentral or a Vonage or an 8x8 that's going to go spend a fortune on digital marketing. Ours is going to be spent on our partners and getting our messaging out to our partner community and our partner community customers out there, so that they know that when they return back to work, if their communication needs need to be addressed, they can simply reach out to their partners and their partners will take care of them. Great.
Now, are you seeing any opportunities in new target markets that you haven't targeted before, industries, because of COVID?
I think that, again, as I mentioned, disaster recovery has always been a topic of discussion, but for many businesses, it was something that was always on the back burner. And so, I think that when I look at the amount of deals that we've been selling over the last 8 weeks during this pandemic, businesses that are professional firms that didn't have disaster recovery in place are starting to be the norm rather than the exception. So we're seeing a lot of professional firms law firms, accounting firms, medical practices that didn't have the proper setup and are really migrating to the cloud very quickly now because their businesses rely on their communications. So when their communications were interrupted with this pandemic, they're searching for solutions. So that's going to be a concentrated area for us because it's always been a strong area for us. But I think again, the COVID situation is really going to escalate and hasten the need for these businesses to migrate to the cloud. Great.
So obviously you talk about wanting to make acquisitions as part of your growth strategies moving forward. Do you anticipate that will the acquisition environment change for you because of COVID now? For example, are you going to see a lot of smaller firms maybe that won't be able to compete, maybe be up for sale? And I know you had talked about the pricing being a little too high, some of the valuation expectations of some of these people you were going after to buy. Do you see those valuations actually coming down or going up, you think, in your opinion, based on what's going on?
Yeah, I think it's a little early to tell, but I think that the acquisition market, from my perspective, should get better. I think if businesses were challenged, so when we think about hosted solution providers out there, when you take out the big guys of the RingCentrals and the Vonage and the 8x8s and the Verizons and the Comcast out there, and then you see the middle section with the Crexendos out there, you've got a lot of smaller mom and pops out there that run a hosted environment using a BroadSoft platform or Metaswitch platform. And some of those businesses may have been struggling pre-COVID. And so if they were struggling pre-COVID and they weren't profitable and they had a lot of debt, post-COVID, they're going to be in a world of hurt. And so, again, we look at Crexendo, and over the years, we've built up a profitable model, and the fact that we've got profitability and we've got cash flow, puts us in a stronger position. And so some of the acquisition targets out there may not be in as strong of a position. So before COVID, they might have been in a position where they thought their valuations were much higher and they weren't in desperate need to look at alternatives. Now this situation might be forcing them into considering the sale of their asset, their company, for less than what they were previously thinking. So we've always been very cognizant of the fact that we're not going to overpay for something. We're going to look for a nice accretive acquisition that makes sense for us. And so I do think that this will hopefully give us more opportunities out there than we previously had. And I don't think it's going to increase the price levels at this point. Now, 6 months from now, when these businesses start seeing the heavy migration for businesses to move to the cloud, that could change because their business could rebound just like all the other businesses out there in the country are hoping for a quick rebound. The UCaaS companies that might be struggling through this pandemic, I would think would be hoping for a quick rebound.
Great. So let's move on to your backlog. That's a really big part, I think, of your story. So if anyone missed the presentation or didn't listen to the whole presentation, maybe it'd be the idea for you to talk about where your backlog sits right now again. And I think it's important for new investors to understand that and hit on that as much as possible. And maybe also talk about how the backlog has grown over the last several years and really how important the backlog is to your continued growth.
Sure. So as I mentioned in the presentation, nearly 100% of our customers are on long-term contracts, typically 36 or 60 months, 60 months being the high majority of our customers out there. So what does that mean? If I sign up a customer for a $500 a month service, and I sign them up for 60 months, that's a $30,000 total contract value, $500 a month times 60 months, $30,000 total contract value, of which I recognize revenue 1 month at a time. So I'm going to recognize that revenue, $500 per month for 60 months. So when I sign that customer up, I recognize $500 a month in month 1 and 2, but the other months that are still under contract that haven't been recognized go into our backlog. So that backlog number at the end of Q1 sat at $26.6 million. So that's a pretty strong insurance policy. As I highlighted on our presentation, that backlog flows out over the next 4.5, almost 5 years. And so if you look at just 2020, we've got nearly $8 million in backlog already queued up that will be recognized as revenue in 2020, about $7.5 million worth of backlog that's already queued up for 2021. So that's revenue that's already sold and sitting on the sidelines waiting to be recognized. And so that's a critical component for us. We've continued to grow our backlog quarter after quarter for just the last amount of quarters that I can even remember. I can't remember one quarter where we've actually taken a downside in our backlog. So every quarter we've been averaging up and up and up. And so that backlog number is critically important to us. And so as we continue adding new sales each and every quarter, that backlog number continues to grow. And that backlog number, again, is locked in for us, and that's long-term customer contracts that we will be recognizing that revenue over time.
Great. So can you put your backlog in perspective in relation to your competition? Do some of your competitors have these similar long-term, backlog arrangements, or is that very unique to your business? And are there termination penalties? I mean, can customers, if they wanted to leave a contract early for some reason, especially with COVID now, if that ever happened, are there reasons they can't do that? Are there termination fees, or is it easy to back out from a contractual point of view? I know it might be hard from a stickiness point of view, but.
Sure. So many of our competitors, if we had this discussion 3 years ago, I would have told you that we were one of the few that were doing term contracts. Many of our competitors 3 years ago were all doing month-to-month contracts. They realized pretty quickly that month-to-month contracts didn't have much stickiness and their churn was off the charts. I believe the reason that we've got very little churn is because we have our term contracts. 1, 2, we do a great job customer service and support-wise, secondarily. And so when we look at the fact that most of our competitors now have switched from month-to-month models to term contracts, tells me that what's the old saying that the sincerest form of flattery is copying, so or imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So the fact that we were one of the few that were doing term contracts years ago, and now just about every one of our competitors does term contracts today, tells me that we were doing something right all along. We again do have a great relationship with our customers. We give them discounts for the longer term that they sign up with. So, a 36-month contract is going to be a little bit more expensive for a customer on a monthly basis than a 60-month contract. So it's in their best interest to lock in for long term. Most customers don't change their phone system for years and years and years. So it's to their advantage, since they're not going to be changing very often, to try and lock in the best rates possible. We do enforce our term agreements. So if a customer were to tell us that they wanted to leave for whatever reason, it rarely happens, but if they get acquired by somebody else, or if they have challenges in their business, or whatever the case might be, we do enforce that term agreement. And so if they've signed up for $1,000 a month for 36 months and they're 24 months into agreement and they attempt to leave, they're obligated to that additional $1,000 a month for the additional 12 months, and we will pursue that. And so we try and work with our customers as best we can to make sure that they don't leave us, but if they do leave us prior to the end of their term, we are going to pursue that, and we have a very high success rate on collecting on that.
Great. So you're now let's move on to a little bit of your sales process here. So I think your sales staff is consolidated in Arizona. Is that where they're all located?
We're headquartered in Arizona, but not all of our sales team is here in Arizona. As I mentioned, we've got 70% of our business comes from our partner channel. And so for our partner channel, we've got channel managers that are geographically located across the country. So we've got a number of channel managers that are located outside of Arizona, handling the West Coast, East Coast, and central part of the United States. And then on our direct sales team, the majority of our direct sales team is here in Arizona, but we've got 2 direct sales reps that are outside of Arizona that, again, handle just a regional type scenario for handling direct sales.
What are some of the incentives one of your partners or may be incentivized to sell your product over a competing product when they're talking to a potential customer?
Sure. So most of our partners that we have today sell Crexendo as their UCaaS solution. We really don't want our partners to have 3 or 4 hosted solutions under their portfolio because it doesn't really behoove them and it doesn't behoove the customer to have multiple options that they constantly change. We want that relationship to be, hey, we sell Crexendo because it's the best solution out there. It's got great support. It's got great feature functionality. Not because they paid us, $2 more than somebody else because they had an incentive out there. So we really look at that relationship as a long-term partner relationship. And so for our partners, we've got a very lucrative commission structure for our partners. We do have nice incentive programs for our partners to bring on new customers. We also have, very enticing incentives for the end user customers to come on with our services as well. As an example, during the COVID pandemic here, we've got 4 free months of service that we're offering end user customers. We're waiving activation fees. We're giving free collaboration licenses, allows them to do video conferencing and screen sharing. We're giving them free Crexendo mobile application solutions and free desktop solutions. So we're doing a lot to incentivize customers that need our services to be able to get into our services with no activation fees, no upfront costs, and giving them all the tools that they need to be able to function right out of the gate. And I think our partners appreciate the fact that we've designed programs to help them with their customers. And so although it's a competitive environment out there, I think the relationships that we have with our partners out there are extremely strong because it's a very lucrative solution for them. And we really look at it as a win-win. So when a partner tells me that they've got 2 or 3 other hosted vendors in their portfolio, they're not as strong of a partner for me as somebody that handles Crexendo as their exclusive UCaaS offering.
Great. So do you see your internal sales force growing significantly over the next couple of years? And if that's the case, can you? How long does it take a new sales rep to come and be productive? And can you maintain profitability while that's all going on?
Sure. We look at growth and profitable growth is mission critical for us. So we're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to reinvest into the company. We're going to reinvest in sales. So we're constantly hiring new salespeople. If anything, the silver lining to this pandemic for us is that it's created a need for our services, but it's also created a opportunity for us to go out and bring on additional salespeople. So unfortunately, a lot of our competitors out there are reducing force. We haven't had to deal with any layoffs or furloughs at this point in time because we feel like we're fairly strong in our growth pattern right now. And so we look at the fact that, hey, we're going to reinvest in our business. And by reinvesting in our business, we're going to go out and hire people that are industry veterans that can come on board and help us right out of the gate. And we're looking at bringing on new partners. So, our message out to the partner community is that, hey, if you don't have hosted telecom in your portfolio of services now is the perfect time to add it. I can't tell you the amount of businesses out there that are suffering with their core products, but their telecom solutions with Crexendo are the only thing that's moving right now because they've got to have something to sell. So, as an example, copier companies, some of our strongest copier companies, copier sales have slowed down to nothing over the last 2 or 3 months with the pandemic because nobody's in the office, nobody's needing copiers replacements because nobody's in the office to use them. But the copier companies that are selling Crexendo telecom services have found that has become really a surviving trait for them, and that in an industry that's really hit hard right now, they've got telecom services that are really helping them out tremendously. So again, we're reinvesting in going out and putting incentive programs in place to our partners, but we're also reinvesting back into our sales team. So if you look on LinkedIn, you'll see that we're posting for positions right now. We're looking to increase our sales headcount and our presence out there. From a direct sales perspective, it takes a good 60 days for a sales rep to come on board, get trained, learn our product, and start filling up that pipeline to where we can start seeing an ROI out of that hire. But there's definitely a lot of opportunity out there for us to continue growing our sales staff.
Great. I see Steve Mahalo out there on LinkedIn. Yeah, selling too. It's funny
Yep.
that.
No, he's as CEO. He's the consummate sales professional. So he's got over 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. I think it maxes out at 30,000 followers. So he's got 30,000 followers out there. So getting a message out there that hey, we're hiring and we're looking for acquisitions and customers need our service and here's what our service offers. It's a great forum for him to get the message out there.
Great, great. I got a couple more questions here, and then we'll let you go. One of the things I think one of your advantages you talked about is having these extra features to offer your potential clients to win them. But I guess once you have them, since you're offering these premium features, how do you upsell your customers later to get more wallet share out of them?
Yeah, so our customers that we have in place are strong customers, and we have a great relationship with them. But you're right. When we have a solution that has most of the feature functionality as a standard offering, there's not a lot of upside for upselling, but there are additional licenses, there are additional phones and support. So if we think about the fact that most of our customers out there, when they moved from a office environment to a remote environment, a lot of them just picked up their phones and took them home. But a lot of our customers said, hey, I don't want to have to be responsible for having people moving phones back and forth. Just let's order phones for their home and we'll have 2 phones for them. And so those were additional phones, additional licenses. Our collaboration license, we offer 1 collaboration license for every customer at no additional charge, but then the additional licenses are a chargeable feature. And so when we think about that, it's kind of the opportunity to say, hey, we know you're going to use this, so here's 1 license, but if you need to have multiple people using it at the same time, you're going to need multiple licenses. And so that has turned out to be a great upsell opportunity because especially now with the pandemic, a lot of businesses need to have multiple collaboration meetings going on at any given time. So 1 license doesn't suffice, so they have to add additional licenses. And lastly is, the telephones themselves. So very similar to your mobile phone and my mobile phone is that, I've got an iPhone 10, but, my son's got an iPhone 8 and he wants an iPhone 11. So when we think about the fact that everybody that's got an older phone wants the latest and greatest, folks that have a 4-year-old phone from Crexendo may want to upgrade to the latest and greatest model. And so when their term comes up, we make that very easy for them to do by upgrading to the latest and greatest, and hopefully not even increasing their monthly service amount.
Great. Finally here, Doug, my last question. You said I think you had in-house customer support, service support is all in-house. Is there a reason you chose to go that route? I mean, do your competitors also do that, or do they outsource to capture more margin? And why did you, I guess, choose not to do that?
Yeah, first and foremost, the expertise in-house is mission critical, so we want to make sure we've got the best customer service out there. So some of our competitors have it in-house, others outsource it overseas. We found that outsourcing it overseas hasn't been a good viable option for us at this point in time. We do offer 24/7, 365 days a year customer service and support. So we believe that when a customer calls in and has a problem, that they need to get to somebody that knows their system, knows it well, and can walk them through the solution, as opposed to getting somebody overseas that may not have a vested interest in that relationship. So it's something that it's a profitable solution for us. It's affordable for us today. We have looked at outsourcing options in the past, and it just didn't have the right ROI for us. Is that to say that it's not something that we wouldn't consider in the future? It's definitely something that's always on the table if it's got an ROI for it. Right now, it doesn't have an ROI for us, and again, for some of our competitors that do have it outsourced, that's one of the things that we hear when we take a customer from one of our competitors, is that they didn't like the customer service, they didn't like the support, maybe it was outsourced overseas, and they didn't like that aspect. So we really try and tout the fact that hey, we're headquartered here in the United States. All the research and development and software development is all done here in the United States, and all the customer service and support is done here in the United States by Crexendo employees.
Great. Oh, well, thank you, Doug. We've been here with Doug Gaylor for laying out your growth plan and answer some questions. Again, if you have additional questions that we didn't cover today, make sure to email us at conferences@littlegrapevine.com, and we'll be sure to make sure Doug gets those questions. So enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Talk to you soon, Doug.
Thanks, Maj. And to everybody on the call here, stay safe, stay healthy, and if we can help you out in any way with your communication needs, feel free to reach out to us.